Welcome everybody. We're in the Public Art Select Committee of Wednesday, March 7th. Halton Squalum, Quis Collectum, Plus Squamish, Whale. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an agenda in front of the committee. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Make my bag. Seconded by Adrian. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's minutes from the January 10th meeting. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes. Moved by Maciek, seconded by Sydney. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? We can always talk about things at the round table as well. So, we're going to skip down to 4.2, and I think this is essentially the major part of the conversation is how do we move this significant project forward, and what does the committee want to see in terms of how Devon can articulate the proposal and put it out to the public. So I think we just want to really drill down exactly what we're trying to do, and then Devon will come back with what that proposal call will look like at the next meeting, and then we'll hopefully approve it and giddy up. Devon, do you want to maybe just...
I had started kind of doing a project plan just because in the absence of our consolidated thoughts. So I just did a quick background, the inception, the art committee, funds available, undertaking the major project, the program. Last meeting we were struggling with whether or not it was a project versus a program, with it geared towards truth and reconciliation. Some of the key themes coming out of the meeting with the elders was truth and reconciliation and honoring and respecting the wisdom of the elders, sharing space and heart, that notion of making room for all. Stewardship of the earth was also a major theme that came out, if you remember. We also heard about promoting young artists and the challenges in marketing around those young artists. Traditions and passing of knowledge to youth. That was the second aspect of the youth theme that we heard. Cultural space, a space for sharing in art and in cultural pieces. Trust was also a theme that came out. And that the RFP really should honor the materials used in the production. For example, the tree example, where the spiritual journey is not just about the artist, but it's also about the materials and the creation of those materials. And then leveraging money to further the amount of the investment.
Any other, I think Devon covered most of them from that meeting. Anything else that we missed, anybody? Tracia, no? Okay.
So I've thrown up some objectives, more as a discussion than anything else. What does key success indicators look like to this committee? What does success look like? Is it endorsement from Squamish Nation elders? Is it delivering an on-budget piece of public art? Is it involving Squamish Nation youth or the Squamish community youth? Is another key success factor just strictly truth and reconciliation work and access to the public? So these are all
all of the above.
All of the above. Yeah, exactly. So coming out of here today, I want all of us to be on the same page so that when I come back next meeting, success looks the same to all of us, and that the RFP or the RFQ that I sit down to write after this meeting reflects the united voice of this committee. High-level options that we discussed, really one large art project versus two small, one large, one small, one large with a grant program. There had been some discussions about what a grant program might look like. And then there had also been the idea of just going out to RFP and seeing what came back. And so I defined large and small as a large is defined as any piece over $50,000. So when we talk about the quantitative large and small, we're talking about the value of the project, not necessarily its size. And small is defined by any piece under 20,000.
What's RFP again?
Pardon me?
What's RFP again?
Request for proposal.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I guess between 20 and 50 is medium.
exactly.
What's RFQ then?
Request for quote.
Quote,
I just,
RFEI, request for expression of interest. We could go on.
we could go on. Don't ask me to tell you the difference between the two. I just listed some stakeholders and their interests, expectations, and concerns, and the role that they may play in this. Squamish Nation elders, you guys as the Public Arts Select Committee, Mayor and Council, citizens of Squamish, and then the selected artist. So each of these groups represent a stakeholder in the successful management of this project. Assumptions.
Yeah, well, let's go back to that
Oh,
one.
sorry,
Nick?
yeah.
The only question I have, I mean, it's great obviously that we necessary that we contact the elders. Do we have to contact Squamish Nation, like chief and council as well, at least for courtesy? No?
No, they can do them. They can do that.
The elders do
The
it?
elders.
Okay,
There's 3 of them at the office.
okay.
Josh, Shar, and Deanne.
Yeah, I
I'm not
think,
sure.
I did bring it up with, I can't remember, I think Josh, Chris Lewis, and Deanna, and Joyce were at the meeting. I did bring it to them saying the Public Art Committee was
Is looking at this.
doing this, we've met with the elders, so, I mean, those 3 plus Chris Lewis are generally aware,
Yeah.
so. I'll keep them, because they might forget, just because
Just as
it
courtesy.
came up in the conversation, but just to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
or any
they're in the loop and
significant-
keep them up to date, and
Any significant press releases too, and things
Yeah.
like that.
and we'll rely on Swacia to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Is there any specific groups or community stakeholders that this group maybe feels that I may have missed?
Yeah, Cindy?
Just as a consideration, it's dependent, but we did apply, the Arts Council did apply for a grant to fund a youth component to whatever this project is. So if we get that funding, that's funding we can provide to this project via the Arts Council.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So the Arts Council could.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In theory,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Meg?
So again, further to that with the youth, which was listed, the stakeholder group, is there a group that represents or youth, or how do we deal with that portion of it?
Well, we could, how I wrote the grant portion, and I took what we heard from the elders and from this committee, is that it would be Squamish Nation youth working with the artists. So that's how the grant is currently written, that we wrote for it. We can, if we're awarded the funding and this committee decides there's a better way to go about forming that experience with youth, then we can go back to the grantor and inform them of that post-award and see if they accept the changes. But as it's written currently from the Arts Council's perspective is that the funds would go towards supporting the program to bring Squamish Nation youth into the fold to learn artistry from the artist.
I guess
Almost like a
the-
mentor-y.
As a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. I'm just wondering if we're missing an opportunity that it shouldn't be just Squamish Nation kids doing it. You know, it may actually, if there's other opportunities to have kids working together on a project and other kids learning some of the Squamish Nation skills and skills,
Yeah.
that might be something that we want to look at.
Definitely, and I mean, if we want, so there's a few ways you could go about. One, we could go back to the grantor and say, actually, we want to expand the parameters. We think this is a good reason because X, Y, and Z. Here's a letter of support from various stakeholders involved to support that decision, see what they say. Two, the funds awarded through the grant could fund that portion and we bring in an extended group of youth via another avenue, for example. So those are the two models I could see it going. That's, again, all contingent if we get approved in the first place, but yeah.
There's
So
more
I-
question for this group as well, not only the funding.
Yeah.
I think the obvious one is through the high school's art programs. Certainly while school's in session.
Or the youth center as well.
And the youth center possibly too, yeah. Youth, just in terms of how do we make sure youth are involved in this whole process?
So should they be added to the list of stakeholders?
Yeah.
Should be the high schools or the youth in general, or how do we?
I think it'd be
You
good
go
to
back
be
to your
specific,
slide.
otherwise I think it might get lost.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add them.
We can go back,
Sorry, what would you like me to do?
go back a couple of slides.
To the objectives?
Yes. So when you wrote on there involvement of Squamish Nation youth, and you said or youth overall, it just should be and instead of or. Right? So involvement of Squamish Nation youth and,
That's.
involvement of Squamish Nation youth and Squamish community.
Yeah.
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 Not
It's
or.
not, well, yes, I think my assumption was that Squamish Community Youth included Squamish Nation Youth.
Well, let's just make sure it's obviously inclusive. So
Yes.
Yeah. Maciej?
Well, there's interesting project in high school in Ladysmith where they have workshop in First Nation language where other students are invited to participate. And they sort of analyze structure of the language, the history of it, which is interesting project because there are not only First Nations students, youth are involved, but all the other students.
Yeah, it could be that, depending on what our overall budget ends up being on this, it could be that we dedicate a certain amount of it to make sure either if we need to augment what the Arts Council has put forward, or we want to bring in a language component through the nation to it, to sort of augment the programming. It could be that we partner with the nation to help augment that programming. So that can be part of the deliberations on how we may want to start budgeting out the monies we have, and maybe we do want to put a little aside to program it somehow as well. So that can be part of the committee's discussion for sure. Yeah.
Should we be prescriptive at this point in terms of who that youth stakeholder would be, or should we just say it's a collective youth?
I'm open to suggestions.
I'd like to see both actually, because it is a truth and reconciliation. And I think that we don't get to truth and reconciliation unless we have both communities. You know, actually talking to each other and sharing stories and listening, and that's my take on it.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify what I mean is like, should we put it in the youth center, Big Brothers Big Sisters, you know, a very specific organization or now, like, is it just?
I think more we combine than separate, it's better for the project.
Maybe what we do is just put youth and maybe list some of them, because if we just say youth, we're not going to target in on actually making it happen, because you have to sort of focus it.
Yeah, because they got an Aboriginal leadership at Housesound, and they have a leadership at Housesound.
Yeah, they have the leadership, they have the arts. I think you want to get engagement with people who are going to actually really participate and engage and benefit and learn, and the alternative school might be another one as well. So
So,
I think once we focus it more,
Yeah,
it might define more where we may
yeah.
be strategic in that regard.
The gist that I'm taking away from the conversation is that I need to include the expectation in the write-up that they will be working with youth of some sort.
Or, yeah, explain how you would engage youth in your proposal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or
That's the
articulate how you,
expectation.
yeah, exactly. Does that sound right to everybody? So, yeah, I think just add to that stakeholder group, youth, Squamish Nation youth and other, and,
I will. You bet.
what slide were you on?
Assumptions, the major project could likely run into 2019.
Do you mind making that bigger, sorry?
Sorry.
No, I just, my,
No, yeah, I realized I'm
turning
sorry
into an
about
old
that.
blind
I was
person.
thinking the same.
Oh, sorry.
Just being polite. I'm just.
There we go.
There we go, sorry about that. these are assumptions that I'm making as a writer, so this is the avenue for us to dispel them, that the budget is approximately $82,000, that leveraging the budget will result in an additional $25,000 to $35,000 in grant, and that the piece will reside somewhere in the downtown. Any of those assumptions need correcting?
I'd like to leverage the budget for an additional 75 grand.
You're ambitious.
Doesn't hurt at this stage to be ambitious.
Yeah.
Does it?
No. Think big.
And well, let's get through this, but let's talk about how we may fundraise for that.
Yeah. All right, editing and doing things at the same time. Now, I had started a risk register just because it's who I am. So some of the risks associated with this budget, or with this project, is that costs could exceed the budget.
Is that
Oh.
projectors may not work. It's a big risk.
It's a big risk.
It's
Like,
our
We
immediate
have to
risk.
learn to listen more, that's what it is.
Likelihood of occurrence high. So costs exceed the budget. The timeline is a challenge for completion in 2018, or Squamish Nation doesn't like it. This is not a cumulative list. This is for us to build upon and figure out ways to mitigate that through the process.
I think it's great to highlight those, and also to have strategies to make sure we're, for example, Squamish Nation doesn't like this. We look at how we ensure that there's involvement and input and decision, if it even comes to that, with the nation, to make sure there is fundamentally we can't fail on that one. We can't fail on any of them, but
No.
can't fail on budget either, but
But it really undermines the purpose of the project if we fail on that one.
exactly, yeah.
We want to implement a collaborative plan so that
Mhm.
they're included in the planning process.
So there is budget, Squamish Nation, and
Budget timeline,
timeline.
yeah.
I'm not, maybe the committee, budget, obviously we want to come in on budget. If for whatever reason we do go over, there's council contingency, but in theory we'll want to state a budget. The timeline one, how important is the timeline to people? I don't want this to drag on forever, but if for the right project, it takes a few more months, then I'd rather have that latitude, even though I may not be
Yeah.
sitting in this chair.
It would be nice to maybe have from this point or some point in a month or two, to have a preferred deadline, like it could be a year,
A time
right?
frame, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that, because time seems to be screeching on.
Yeah,
And so you have a preferred deadline, and then we can all focus towards that. And if we go over, then we talk about the leeway that we need.
mhm.
Because then it's not going to be a 5-year project.
Exactly.
Which
I
is
think
what happened with Susan Point's project in Whistler. It went over for years. So, and it was because she was a busy artist and had a lot of other things, and she also changed the project and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So
Yeah. No, I think the timeline is really important,
for sure.
but for me, it's not hard and fast if it's
Yeah.
done by
Yeah, not
October, or if
soon.
it's done by December, if it's done by next March, or if it's
Yeah.
done by next summer, if it's the right
Yeah.
project.
But
It
then,
needs to have the time.
depending on who the artist is, they can block out that the time
Mhm,
according to what they need to do.
mhm. Okay,
Great.
everyone's on board with that? Okay. That's nice.
Going back to timeline, probably it will be easier to set the timeline when we know the project.
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
Otherwise,
And I think as as Catherine said, we kind of want to set a time frame so artists can commit to something, but at the same time,
Speaking
if
as
one
somebody-
project comes in and says,
Artists need deadlines.
yeah, no,
All
just
artists need
everyone,
deadlines.
Writers need deadlines, artists need
Yes,
deadlines.
yeah.
Speaking as someone who.
I completely get it. But if, what I'm saying is if we get proposals in and one proposal comes in, it's just amazing,
Yeah.
but
They
they
want 2
can't do
years.
it till March next year, the committee can say, it's worth the wait.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say with it. No, I understand the value of deadlines and time. All over it. So why don't we talk about fundraising right now? So we have 82, 85, what did you say it was, earmarked?
82.
Oh, look at you, you've done a different thing. So we have 82, and it'd be great to get another 75 or so we're in that 150 range. Because we did talk about, at the last meeting, because what we heard from the elders was really wanted something that honored the tradition, the art of the First Nation, which I think we all value. But we also talked about, is there another project that is more about reconciliation and maybe collaborative project, and we go forward with sort of 2 major projects, or a minor and a major project, but a reconciliation piece, as well as honoring First Nations art and culture piece. Because that's certainly what we heard from the elders, I think. And so I think that's how we left it last meeting, was we're looking at 2, and that's why we want to get double the money. Did I remember that right?
Yeah, it sounds about right. My head is getting really ambitious on this.
I like it.
I'm just thinking of a reconciliation square, right, in downtown, with pieces there as the focal point. Meeting place.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, it would be cool because it would be an absolute,
Commitment.
an
To an
absolute
ongoing
commitment.
process.
And also a meeting place going forward forever, but, well, not forever, but, going forward for a long time. So I like, because I was just thinking, well, where could you put it? It needs a special place.
Yeah. I think, and if we wanted to be very specific about where it went, we could outline that in the RFP. If we wanted to allow the artists to influence where that may or may not go, we're a little bit limited in that we can only put on public land. We have to get permission from private landowners. But do we want to be prescriptive about where it's going? Or do we want to allow the artists to, and does that become part of just how we evaluate the project? And I see merits in both. I'm not trying to determine either one. I would like conversation to sort of go around the room to see where we get to. Meg?
Can we
Alright,
kick around your idea a little bit? Like, even if, it
Yep.
can't happen
I love
instantly or tomorrow, but in the planning process, in the future, I know one of the groups who got together said that we should have, like a public meeting place, a public square kind of thing. It was the, and having this as a goal to get to, and if we have public art, reconciliation art, that at that point we could move when we get that square.
I also think it would be significant because we celebrated the centennial of Squamish. We celebrated, the settler side of things, and it would be very cool to have something that is looking forward that way too. And I feel like it's more inclusive.
Adrian?
Well, I'm just thinking about, we're very limited, if we're going to do it downtown, we're very limited on where we can put a fairly, assuming it's going to have a fair bit of space, right? That if we don't prescribe a place for people to put it, like they're not going to know
What kind of a space?
what kind of place space it is. We have to outline something, so and there's only really 3 or 4 places.
Oceanfront?
We could do the oceanfront, sure.
The oceanfront is possible. The challenge with the oceanfront, of course, is if we're trying to do this in the next year, we have a permanent location.
Yeah.
No, one of the things we did a couple of years ago is sort of, I guess, a baby step towards reconciliation is we dedicated the waterfront park in downtown Winneff Park, which is the name of the village essentially that was in this part of Squamish originally. And I can't remember what it means, but it's something like greeting or welcoming place or something like that. No, what is it?
I don't know.
I don't know, okay.
No, no.
We can get that meeting though, because it has some sort of gathering place or meeting place or welcoming place, something like that. Just can't remember. And we also, of course, had the blessing and blanketing ceremony around the naming of the park and the building, the canoe shed building, which was a Heritage Canada grant that enabled that building. So there's the beginnings of that sort of a meaningful honoring of place and reconciliation there. So certainly the waterfront park is a possibility. And I think we'd really look to maybe Swayze and the nation to sort of make sure that we were doing that properly. And maybe it's not a square, maybe it's Reconciliation Park, Winneff Reconciliation Park, or that type of thing as well. That's a possibility.
Are we talking about the strip behind the, let's say, called this boathouse? Where the Biennale had projection?
Yeah.
Right, this is the area. It's absolutely ideal as a meeting place.
Yeah. Would a large piece be seen at, from,
Squamish?
yeah?
No.
No, okay. Wasn't sure what the view is like.
Yes, there's a
When
bit
we're
of
at the
a,
waterfront,
there's
you can see Nexon Beach.
Yeah. I like that idea, something that can be seen across the blind channel. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I know I'm just doing it without thinking
Yeah,
about how
but-
hard that is.
maybe we do that in 5 years from now when there's actually,
Yeah, something, well, what I actually like about using the area with the canoe shed is it's relatively close to Municipal Hall. It's close to the cenotaph.
It's sort of
You know, and we could
downtown.
actually do a walking connection, you know, between, you know, different venues and locations, which might serve to enhance and expand that kind of center of town.
And that
I
kind
think
of shit
because you have the sidewalk, right? And you got the canoe shed, you got the CM Park. And
Building on that.
and anything
That-
that wouldn't be a square, would be a circle.
the only
There
thing,
we go.
the only thing with that park is, of course, we do have to raise it for flood protection levels at some point. There's all sorts of ideas about, because we have to raise it about 10 feet, we put a parkade underneath and put the park on top of the parkade. So whatever we do may have to be moved or somehow readjusted down the road, but,
Okay, sounds,
and that may be the case if we put something on Ocean too. It may
yeah,
have to be.
sounds like that. It's going to have to go into the RFP, you know, something that could be movable.
Yeah, if we do it there. I mean, the other issue with that space is it's sort of hard to find for non-Squamish people, so for tourists.
Currently,
people,
yeah.
Currently, it's not, I mean, and it's, yeah, it's always going to be a little bit out of the way because of Loggers Lane and the current
When we
structure
get
of
the
Loggers Lane.
Malcolm Trail, the waterfront trail,
Yeah,
it should.
It's going to
Even
dramatically
more
change in the
discipline.
next 3 to 4 years,
Yeah.
dramatically.
I
Yeah,
hear what you're saying.
I think it's, I just think it's currently a little bit lost,
Yeah.
at least in the structure of it currently, and then.
it hasn't realized its potential yet.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking about the redevelopment of it too, that when the park is redeveloped and that kind of stuff, then there's a huge opportunity, I think, not only to put the cribbing in and that kind of stuff, but also to look at interpretive signs and look at a whole bunch of
Totally.
things and actually make a really substantial project out of that, I would think.
Yeah. Fran, did you want to?
Well, I was just assuming that that whole area is going to remain a park,
Yes.
you know, south of those two big new buildings that are going in
Mhm.
and the yacht club, that's never going to be developed?
It's owned by the city. We acquired it through a Crown grant, so we can only use it for public purposes,
Okay.
unless we bought it out from the Crown for development purposes,
Yeah.
which ideally we have no intention of ever doing.
Unless it's for an arts center.
Oh, yes.
So does everyone sort of like the idea of, I'll just call it a reconciliation square for now, but it could be a reconciliation
Circle.
pavilion, circle, park, triangle, rectangle, octagon.
Star. I just think it's really important, the symbolism of it, because it's not just a one thing, boom, and then it's done and we go our ways. It really has to be an ongoing project, I think.
And an
reconciliation.
ongoing gathering spot, that's what
Yeah.
that's what I like about it. I mean, that stretch of land along the Mamcram Blind Channel will eventually be more, used more.
Very much
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I mean, that's the aim, clearly, so.
You can definitely naming things gives meaning.
Mm-hmm. I mean, interestingly enough, the park where the pavilion is actually called Junction Park. And I don't know why it was ever called. Do you know why it was called Junction Park? It means nothing to me. Maybe it
Wasn't
meant,
it
maybe there's a
to do with
historic
the
meaning to it.
trains?
Pardon me?
Wasn't it to do with the trains? Wasn't, no? Okay, fine.
No, the funny thing is, I think it's been named that for decades, but we never used it. We always just called it Pavilion Park. And when the pavilion came down, before we built a new pavilion, people were like, we can't call it Pavilion Park anymore. And our staff were like, well, it's actually called Junction Park. So, and who knows when that was dedicated. Probably about the same time as Stan Clark Park, which was about 40, 50 years ago.
I thought there was Ocean Park, is that not true?
I don't think
Is that-
it was
that's not an
Ocean
official
Pavilion. Ocean Pavilion, the park is
Okay.
Junction Park.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had a little plaque on it that said this is what it was and when it was named? And
Yeah, it would be nice.
it's an idea.
Okay, so how are we planning on getting this $25,000 to $75,000 in
Yeah, let's talk about that.
grants?
So, go Sydney, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I sent a couple of suggestions. I'm trying to bring up.
Want me to look them up? Did you send them to me?
No, I'm sorry, I sent them to Devin. No, I can't. Okay. And yeah, so I did connect with Canada Heritage. Their legacy and commemorative components, which are both really large grant funds, it might be a bit of a stretch to get them because they have to fall. They have a lot of eligibility criteria, and they have to fall on like a 25th anniversary, 75th, 100th of something, more or less. And yeah, so they're really hard programs to qualify for. They do have large sums of money, like $500,000 you can apply to, but they're pretty challenging to get. And you need to also demonstrate community buy-in, so there might have to be a community consultation prior to even applying to the grant for that. So there's those ones.
What do you think this committee is? This is committee.
It could qualify, maybe. It's possible. I think the best one to look at is through the Canada Council for the Arts. This is just anecdotal, but they're also notoriously really hard to get funding from because they're a national organization. And I've heard just through grapevines that a lot of other local BC arts councils have had a tough go at getting funding from them. But they do have a program. It's called Concept Realization, and it's up to $100,000. And it's a 4-month turnaround, which is really nice because Canada Heritage is usually about 6 to 8 months. We'd have to register as an arts collective, and
Municipalities can't.
oh, you can't through the Canada Council.
No, they can't.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I was asking, can municipalities?
I feel like they can. Yeah. So how Canada Council, they've kind of just changed around how you apply to their grants. You have to create a applicant profile, so you kind of have to like go through their grants and figure out which ones you want to apply for, and then create a profile that you think will fit. Because it's almost like they will tell you based on your profile what you're eligible to apply for. And if you have a program in mind that you want to apply for, you have to make sure in a roundabout way that they'll let Anyway, it's a little complicated, but Arts Council does have a profile, but we're not eligible for this specific component based on our profile. We can try to create another profile, like a sub-profile. It's possible, but we've also hit our maximum application limit for 2018. So we won't be able to, Arts Council won't be able to apply to 2019.
Yeah.
So that's that one. That's probably the best forum in terms of public funding to leverage funds that I found. I wasn't able to find much else.
But BC Arts Council.
I looked at BC Arts Council. They have a grant that goes to individual artists that could be eligible, and it would help apply up to $12,000 to artists like sustenance and stipends and things. But that's pretty much the only thing for the BC Arts Council that they have right now. Another possibility, but to do really quick in April, is the Arts-Based Community Development Program. But that program is it's kind of interesting in terms of its form, but it needs to be equal components of the community and the artists collaborating to make a piece. And they don't say what that means. I've read a lot of research papers to try to figure that out, but it's a bit of a gray area, but it can't just be the artist creates something and the community appreciates it. The creation has to be a collaborative effort between the two to apply to that grant, and that grant's up to $30,000, I think. It's also very competitive too. We applied last year and didn't get awarded. So.
Is there any Truth and Reconciliation funding out there, like through Truth and Reconciliation Commission Canada, or?
I didn't look there. I did look at the Aboriginal People's Council, and there's another artist council as well, and I didn't see any funding. There's a lot of funding for like mentorships and professional development, which is awesome, but nothing that would work towards this project that I was personally able to find. I don't know if anyone else has other connections in that realm in terms of knowledge on funding. But.
What about, I know Van City just funded art thing. Maybe Van City is another source for 20,000 of it or something.
Definitely, I would say that probably the best bet is going through a bank like Van City or Blue Shore Financial or
Blue
something.
Shore.
Yeah, along those lines.
But Whistler Blackcomb Foundation, would they ever do anything like this?
That would actually be good, because they should do stuff like this.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned it. But, some of the local foundations.
I just don't know if Whistler Blackcomb Foundation, like, in theory, we've got matching funds. We've got 82K, so we can do. I'm not sure if Whistler Blackcomb's ever given a municipality money. Like, it might not.
Yeah, they've definitely given, like they funded the Center Point. They give a big grant to that. So they do, they do.
Non-profits for sure.
That's a
yeah.
non-profit, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough,
Yeah.
fair enough. Can it be applied for via the Arts Council?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
I
not
guess it's worth a
unheard of
phone
in
call.
terms of
Yeah.
like public government entities and nonprofits working together to realize a project. Yeah. Or even, through the nation itself too. That's another option as well.
There's always, I'm always a bit hesitant to suggest it, but there's always developers. I think of particularly the development partner of the nation on oceanfront and G-Guide, stuff like that. And I know Jack Matthews is quite an art dude. He's invested tons in the arts down in Dallas and stuff where he lives, so that type of thing, right, might be a possibility. Mr. O'Dane is obviously a possibility.
We just asked Dale here.
Yeah, Dale will pull out his check.
Dale's got all the contacts.
Do you know Dale? Certainly I have all those contacts, but it's weird for me to ask people like that for money, so I generally don't.
Who should be the one to ask those kind of people for money?
Well, certainly the, am I on the record?
No.
Certainly the people that would be the hardest to say no to is the Squamish Nation, I think. But we want to make sure we're doing this in the most earnest way we possibly can, so.
Did you ever end up having a conversation with Ms. Goldsmith-Jones?
Pam,
Yeah.
we did talk about it briefly, and I'm actually seeing her next week again, so we did talk about it briefly, and then I failed to follow up with her on it, so, and vice versa, so I'll do that again. I think it's more with her, it was like, write down what you're doing and get your application in, and I'll stick handle it once it's in there.
Right.
So I think that's essentially what we have to do, is we need to write this RFP, write the goals and intentions behind it, talk about what the money we're bringing to the project, and actually just make these submissions, and then she can do her magic in the background.
I mean, they can't, as far as I understand how the construction of all that works, is that she might have more stick-handledness in Canada Heritage realm, versus like Canada Council for the Arts is like its own separate arm.
Yeah.
And with that being said, there's those two, even though they're challenging with their eligibility criteria, it's not, certainly not out of the question in terms of the Legacy Fund or the Commemorative Canada Fund. So those are the two that in the Canada Heritage world that this would be somewhat eligible for. The only thing we'd have to navigate is the mark of an anniversary. I don't know if there is any potential significant anniversaries. Both of them call that out though.
Well, I'm going to be 52 next September.
And it has to be on that in increments of 25.
Oh.
So I don't know if there's like a specific, anyway, I mean, I can send this criteria along and we can all consider what that could look like, but that's an option.
So that doesn't have to be like federal, it could actually be local, 25,
Yeah.
multiple.
Yeah.
And
which
that's
would
how we
be
got,
more powerful.
and that's how we got the funding for the canoe shed. It was
And
our
it
50th
doesn't
anniversary.
have to be a positive anniversary, right? If we're talking about reconciliation because of the schools, I'm sure if we reach back 50 years, there can be some commentary about the moment that 30 kids were taken from. You know what I mean? I'm sure that we could learn a little bit about the history of the Squamish youth being taken to residential schools, and we can hit some terrible anniversaries. And if they want that, they can have it at Heritage Canada.
It's an interesting idea actually to do that, because we
I
would have
think
to do some scratching around and some asking questions and listening to stories before we could even get the proposal together.
Yeah, and what do you think? Do you think that, I mean, because there's so much positive spin on this, right? And the act itself of wanting to do this is clearly a positive wish, but the background behind it, the history behind it, which this grant is all about history, is not. So I think it would be quite honest and maybe meaningful to the people who are considering it. I would hope so.
Yeah, I think the only thing is if I think there's a kind of an interesting thing to look at there, but if Canadian Heritage opened it up to that kind of thing, then they'd be getting 300 requests every
Yeah, but
second.
they're big boys and girls.
Yeah,
They can figure it out.
they're given money
I'm
for
always trying to
history, right?
learn
So
from
that's awareness.
others.
Exactly,
So
right,
in-
exactly,
in
but it's
that-
usually like
You guys,
positive history, right?
Yeah.
The things that make people happy. Yeah. This is supposed to be the thing that will make people think, right? And if there is a historical moment that happened 25 or 50 or 100 years ago, 75, that we can tie it into, then it's an option. And I think it's a valid one, but it's also a different way of
I
looking
came
at
to
it.
Squamish 25
Because
years ago.
you,
And
Is that
get your own grant.
as an example, when, I think it was 3 years ago, they did the demolition of St. Michael's Residential School up in Alert Bay. And that divided the family, it divided the nation, it divided like the community, because some of them wanted to keep the residential school and the other half, knock it down. we don't want to see it. But the other, and so in other words, you know the ones that were already on their healing journey, so they understand, right? And, you know, we can't hold on that negative energy.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what I do a lot of times. I share awareness, who we are and where we come from, and I don't make them feel guilty. You know, I'm not there to, you know, say, you know what you guys did. You know what I mean? But some people are still like that. Some people are out there that still, but that's okay. You know, that's their healing journey, right?
Yeah, everybody's going to have a wide perspective on it.
So now they want to come, after they knocked it down, it was really emotional 2 days, because the first night was a youth night. All the youth drum, all the youth sing, and all the youth dance. And so they were all, they made their own regalia and everything, and then the next day, that's when they actually did the ceremony, and all they knocked down was the little veranda over the porch. And they had the bulldozer, and they, you know, the excavator or whatever, and they knocked it down, and then after that, then they sang the healing song, and then the priests were there on, you know, the Anglican church priests, they were there, and, you know, they apologized, you know, so they were doing it together as one. And then after the fact it was knocked down, they had to do it slowly because the asbestos and all that other stuff. But anyways, after it's knocked down, and now they want to have a big, how do you say that? Commemorative?
Yeah.
That's what they want. That's what they want to do, because they don't want the history to be gone.
Lost.
Ignored.
Right?
No,
And
no,
it
no.
does.
Because the next generation, like say,
I
for
went
example,
to- I
your
was in-
kids, they go up and they says, oh,
Yeah,
oh.
I went to Alert Bay last summer, and it's a little bit sad because you can't actually have any, there's nothing really tangible to show.
Yeah.
They do have a museum, and they have the tallest totem pole, but they don't, there's nothing to commemorate or to say, hey, like, this
This
is what
happened
happened here, and this
It's
is
the
what you read
reason
books.
they never knocked down Auschwitz.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Magic.
Well, last summer I went to New Denver, and one of the highlights of the place is the Japanese Intertown, which they converted into incredible park with the houses where they were housing Canadians of Japanese origin. And the place is stunning with history. There's even paid person who gives you a personal tour, just walks around and explains every kettle, every piece of memorabilia there. And I sort of imagine learning something from that. Because that was so powerful, so educational, so stunning, so well made.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
important.
we want to have that impact through this project for sure. It's quite funny, I just Googled 1968 and it came up with a Squamish Times article, and the lead is council reviews $500,000 budget. Sorry, just
Layers of this, what you're proposing for this project?
1968.
So that'd be the 25th anniversary of 5,000.
Of a five-
And we wanted to use that for $500,000 for a reconciliation piece.
Yeah, I just,
No, it's the 50th.
I just thought it was funny, I had to share it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the easiest date is the end of World War
There
I,
was a time when it was the 20th.
right? That was 1918, that's 100 years ago.
Sorry, what was that?
World War I ended in 1918, 100 years ago. Definitely, there is some First Nation, I don't know if it's the local First Nation, I know there was
Yeah,
some.
there was First
I just-
Nations that died in
not
that.
up on my history.
Absolutely.
Not up on my history, but
Yeah, no,
There's a terrific remembrance ceremony every Remembrance Day at Totem Hall.
yeah.
But we're thinking
Okay.
about the
Right.
25-year, the 50-year.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, we can say it's in commemoration of
So-
that, and then it doesn't have to.
so we can, I think we can maybe collectively in the next week, because we need to get this ready for next month, think about what may legitimize an application to Canadian Heritage.
Okay. I can send a message to Bianca. She might have some ideas too.
I think it would be, that's a really good point. If we, so with the Legacy Fund funds local heritage projects, so those anniversaries have to be unique to your community. With the commemorative fund is national in scope. So the commemorative fund, a bit almost easier barrier to entry, it's less prescriptive, but it has to be national in its focus. And it can be tied to an anniversary of the First or Second World War, and they call that out in their criteria. So that is something to keep in mind when we're thinking about these. Yeah, because just from my conversation with Canada Heritage, I feel like this project might be more eligible for the commemorative spaces, or the commemorative grant, which means we would have to kind of circulate it in the dialogue of a national dialogue of truth and reconciliation. So this committee should consider, is that, or do we want to hyper-focus on Squamish? Because that tells us which of the two streams we apply for, or could try to apply for. And then that kind of narrows in our focus on what eligibility criteria we need to hit. So if we are not cool as a committee doing a project that has a national focus, so to say, on truth and reconciliation, then we have to apply to the legacy fund, which then that tells us which criteria we can heritage in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if you and Devin kind of help fine tune that. Is that all right?
I guess that's more of a question. Is this committee open to a project that is national in focus in truth and reconciliation? So it can still focus on Squamish Nation, but it's more of a Canadian dialogue. Or do we want to be very specific on our local First Nation community within the scope of this project?
And in the past, the conversation has been that we are committed to Squamish Nation. So one part of it was the truth and reconciliation for Squamish Nation, and the other part was more wide open when we had initially been talking about two projects. If I'm recalling correct.
I think they're two projects connected though.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
correct.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm asking is it just narrows down the world of grants and where we look to apply our focus. So, yeah.
It would be interesting to find out who actually sponsored this Japanese intercamp, because it is definitely national and it's definitely focusing on what the government did to people of Japanese origin, and they put lots of attention to it, and we could learn something from it too. What's the thoughts?
I was just thinking that, whether we're talking residential schools, whether we're talking the 60s scoop, some of those things, those happen right across the country, but they're also really local too. Yeah, and I think that if we can get some of the local stories, that are part of the historical background, then that echoes through the country as well. But it really brings it home, I think, to the people of this valley. Both the white invaders and the indigenous peoples of this valley.
The idea when you're telling a story is to make it local anyway, because if you tell it right, it becomes universal.
Yeah.
And that would be my answer to that, right? Is that by telling the Squamish Nation story of reconciliation and of the residential schools, we're telling every story.
And the 60s scoop as well.
And the 60s scoop. Well, there was Linda Epp who lives in Whistler gave a presentation at the Quest TEDx last weekend on her childhood in the 60s. She and her twin sister were taken in the 60s scoop. But she was Seashell Nation. I just found a story from 2011 in The Chief. And it says the Squamish language and culture, there was a project initiated in 1968 by the BC Native Language Project that led to the development of the writing system used today. So that's an anniversary.
Be good, girl. You're part of a tradition there.
Yeah, I know how to use a search engine. Yeah, so that I can send that on to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can reconnect.
And I'll do other little searches like that too. But that's an interesting cultural project that we might be able to tie it into,
So,
especially if we use
I
language.
understand what was initiated by Museum in Victoria, the language project.
Was initiated by?
In Museum in Victoria,
Oh, okay,
there was a group of historians
yeah.
who wanted to put the language in writing. And
Oh, okay, because it hadn't been up
that's
until
how
that
it's,
point.
that's how it
Because
started.
they're still alive, Randy Bouchard and Dorothy Kennedy, they did a lot of work with our nation members. They did a lot of the plant uses and all that stuff, they just wrote everything down. And the books are like this thick. Dad had probably about 5 or 6 books like that thick.
I don't want to necessarily get us off this idea, but I think we're stretching our ability to be successful with Heritage Canada here a little bit.
Okay.
So I don't want to go too far down this path. I think it's worth continuing to explore, but I think maybe we should focus in on things that are possibly a little bit more real, like Van City, and making a direct application to them. And if the committee wants to, even just in a letter form, write to 2 or 3 developers to say, this is what we want to do, we'd like you to help. And we could, yeah, anyway.
I'm not an artist, but I know if an artist was at the table, and that could help us focus on what we really want to focus on. You know what I mean? Like it gives us a objective or subjective or something to focus on.
Yeah, once people see what they're investing in, they
then
say,
our
yeah.
minds can go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there are so many things, and you go 360 here in Squamish. You got Chikai, you got Mount Garibaldi, you got the Chief, you got many legends that revolve around there. You got Shannon Falls, you got the lady, his wife's on the other side. You know, there's so many. You know, whatever the artist picks, right? And then, bam, and then we'll be flying. I know we're doing our share right now, right? Like we're doing the thinking and stuff.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to have an artist at the table.
So that might be the approach we take. We just simply go with the RFP. We know we have $82,000. Proposals come in at $150. We know we have a goal to get X amount of money, but we can say, hey, look, we have this project. We want someone to invest in it. So that's certainly another approach we can take for sure, instead of just securing the money up front. Meg?
I like the idea of, like the stories and getting to know the landscape and getting a little bit more of the language too. And that could, I think, be an art project. It wouldn't be, the kind of bricks and mortar kind of, this is the art piece necessarily. And it's not necessarily for this time, but getting a really well-designed, like sign map kind of program, interpretive program for this particular valley would be an interesting kind of idea about what would that look like, how could it be.
I would just like to see a lot of the key landmarks renamed anyway.
Yeah, but this could be part of that,
I
right?
do, I've long
It's
written
not an instant kind of process.
I get it.
We do have to make sure that Public Art Committee is focusing on public art.
That's why you're here, because
Yeah.
not yet. That's part of a different committee.
That's different, and we have talked about it at council for sure. And an ongoing conversation with the nation about that.
My question is, what do we need to spell out in order to write this RFP?
Yes, we need to
Because
focus in.
to get out of here today, we want to be able to write an RFP, or by we, I mean Devin. And in order to do that, we need to give her some direction. And so that sort of means do we want to pick out a spot for them? Do we want to make sure we know sort of what, and are we going to specific artists, seeing as the Squamish First Nation isn't very large, the amount of artists
Oh, it's
do it.
surprisingly.
I mean, but in terms of it's a pretty big project, and it would be fairly interesting. I don't. That's more of my line of thinking. And sorry to break up with you.
Yeah.
I'll
No, I
second
think
that.
I think I kind of like the idea of let's focus in on getting the RFP done, and we can say yes to however much money we have. But then we have a focal point, as Alice says, about saying here, this is what we want to do. And have something very tangible.
One project or two?
I think we were looking at 2 streams. One is Squamish Nation artist specifically, and one is Truth and Reconciliation, anyone. And we put the RFP out, we put some parameters around it, we see what we get back. If the project we want to do, or the two projects we want to do is X amount of money, we try to find that money.
Yeah.
We set, so if we do 2 streams and artists can apply to either stream, do we set within our $82,000 available a budget, like you can apply for projects up to X amount in this stream and X amount in this stream, or do we not set a budget and maybe we come up with more money as a committee? Just as a-
So, I mean, in terms of applying for grants, we might as well apply for grants beforehand, right? Before we know what the project is, because
Yes.
they're not
There's
going
a
to.
timeline.
There's a timeline that
Yeah.
take forever to do it all.
Yeah.
I agree with going to, individual businesses or, developers, banks, whoever you like, just patrons. Once we have a sort of idea and a scope and something that they might like, but initially it makes sense to also at least
Even if we're asking Van City for money, it's easier to ask for something specific instead of saying, we would like to have some money. We have to have proposal for what the money
Okay,
is
so-
going to be for.
Let's focus in on the proposal. What do we have so far, Devin?
That there are 2 pieces of art, and that we have to determine if they're both big, if they're both small. We actually don't have to determine that. We actually don't have to. We can.
Not yet.
Not yet. What
Yeah.
I'm hearing and what I'm going to write in the proposal is that there's 2 themes, and that the 2 themes they're not independent of one another, that they relate, but they don't necessarily have to relate.
Yeah. They can, but they don't have to.
They can, but they don't have to.
And one proposal goes directly to Squamish Nation artists.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I hadn't assumed that, so thank you for clarifying that.
And are those 2 proposals going to be located together in the same venue, the same location?
I was gonna, again, an assumption, I was writing up one proposal with 2 programs,
2 components.
correct?
I think there's 2 proposals, but
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
open to interpretation here.
Yeah,
I think it has to be 2.
I think it'd be really good if they went out so that people could actually see that there are 2, and not
Yeah.
necessarily that we're going for both simultaneously, or we might be, we might not, but these are 2 possibilities.
But again, depending on the proposal. Because if, for example, we're trying to reconstruct the memory to some degree, say what happened and how it happened, and we could put both projects in the same place, and it will be equally
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
But
They could be
first we
located
have
in
to
the
know
same place.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then we can ask for money, and then we can find deadline, and then we can do it. But first, what we do.
So for the proposal, that's.
I think it sounds like we're going out with like a true request for proposal, like that we're looking for expressions of interest actually in putting together 2 separate pieces yet related, if so be. And that we're looking for them to drive the timeline, and we're looking for them to drive the budget, and we're looking for them to drive the creative behind it, and we'll fold in. My only concern is what Adrian had said in terms of I've got the operations brain ticking away, and I'm thinking about location. And so I would really love a little bit more feedback from this committee. I won't ask you to nail down a specific location. I know that's not necessarily something that I'm going to get at you. But I think at least more conversation around that is warranted.
So I would propose we put it in the downtown as it stands currently. So that's sort of from Vancouver Street to Pemberton, Maine, what is it, Winnipeg, or Buckley maybe, somewhere like that, sort of in that area. And then, yeah, and so if you look at the parks there, then we're sort of, we're on that junction.
Yeah, the
which
assumption,
is good. I guess, yeah, I don't know what's going on in Pavilion Park or in any of the other parks, but I mean, Junction Park seems like the obvious place.
if the assumption is downtown, then to further narrow that, it's a park. And then the obvious selections are,
We have 3 of them
we have 3 of them,
that are contiguous.
yeah. Yeah,
I mean, is there any other space that we can think of that
There is Rose Park,
Rose Park
that's
would be
not
great?
impossible.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd rather not have it at Rose Park myself, I'd rather have it more in the core, but that's a possibility. There's Brennan Park, which is farther from,
Yeah.
Well, assume is sort of almost, for example, Vancouver has Vancouver Art Gallery steps and library steps. And whenever anything is happening, there's any kind of public speaking, debate, protest is happening on those steps. So we need those steps. We have to,
the way you think.
So that could be part of the request.
So let's have some steps.
We need some
And a bridge.
look at Italy.
We can't afford the big building that goes with the steps, but we need the steps.
And the
In Italy,
bridge.
we have the piazza.
Yeah.
People are gathering in the afternoon with ice cream and argue.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
successful. So what we need is something like that, a space.
I'm just gonna, this has not been approved and hasn't gone to even first reading, but one proposal, I'll just put it on my computer quickly and Kelsey's gonna yell at me, is the development that Salterra owns. You familiar? Their old Pac West site. There's, the concept is to close Main Street between Cleveland and Loggers and create in sort of behind the pavilion with possibilities of maybe flipping the pavilion around and creating a
Making it for
urban,
public.
an urban squarish
Yeah,
type.
yeah,
So just to say that those concepts are out there right now.
Yeah, yeah.
As I said, this hasn't even gone first reading, but
And that's also probably 3 to 4 years.
yeah, it'll take 2 or 3 years to build for sure. Yeah.
But our art project might take 3 or 4 years to go too, we don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but in terms of, I mean, and if it's going to be in Junction Park Group, I mean, it has to be movable on some level, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to.
Virtually anything is movable.
Just cost money.
Except for the mosaic.
I think the operations might debate you on that.
That may weigh into what we ultimately decide is the right project because it may have to be moved kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think we should put that in the proposal that,
That we make it out of styrofoam.
yeah, exactly, that it may have to be moved over time in order to, fit into wherever we have that space. But I think that we should develop it in order to go into, say, we can save, one of the parks
Yeah,
downtown.
I agree.
I'm here on behalf of the downtown Squamish BIA, so I
Yeah.
have to sort of push for
I'm
that.
happy with that.
Yeah.
Stacey, does that sort of sound reasonable?
Downtown?
we are making, not to play devil's advocate here, but we are making an assumption that we're dealing with a tangible, permanent, semi-permanent structure. We could be dealing, so is that what we want to write the proposal as, or are we open to multimedia, different forms of art?
I think we have to strive for some permanency.
Good what?
It's a good question. Bingo.
Yeah, we don't want it to just be a light show on the, projected on the TV.
I
It
think
could be part of a light show in the future, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
But
I don't wanna
I think some
limit-
permanency is necessary.
Yeah. See, I don't, my point of view is not sure we want to necessarily, we can make that in our decision making, but I don't know if I want to limit the ideas that come in.
Yeah, that's,
Like in our decision making, that might be a very important piece of our decision making. We want something permanent, but you never know what kind of ideas you're restricting if you confine it too much. I'm just playing a little devil advocate there.
So do we just say any public space in the downtown, of course, so they can use streets or?
It would be
Within-
interesting to
within
find out
minutes.
how people think
Yeah.
about public
Within-
art
obviously,
and
within
that
the-
kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it could
And truth and
be
reconciliation.
chains going down all of our sidewalks, you know, paintings of, I don't know, like, it could be anything, like, I think we sort of have it, sometimes we get in our mind, we kind of go down a certain path and it's just a sculpture.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to constrict it to that.
Okay.
I
But-
kind of like what you said about giving it a region almost. I know downtown is
Right.
somewhat a
Yeah.
region in of itself, the same like the idea of it was between this street, like coordinates. And then that gives the artists, interested artists, the way to explore that area.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think generally downtown area, you know, I would even include Rose Park if we really want to, and, you know, Adventure Center to Vancouver Street kind of thing. We just put a map. Get the map boys on it.
So right now, I won't include Rose Park because I'm getting the feeling, let me see some head nods, let me hear some opinions on that.
X-Day on Rose Park.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, I think so, because
The only devil's advocate here, if somebody had a really fabulous idea about how to use Rose Park for that purpose, then we're cutting ourselves off from that possibility. Do we want to do that?
first of all, it has to be visible, has to be public. And for example, Brennan Center is completely invisible.
Well, and I
You
think
have
Brandon
to-
Park is too far out from
Right.
the.
Yeah.
So we have to eliminate areas which, you know, might be suitable because it belongs to the district, but you have to trip to get there. And
And you don't like walking?
No, no.
Riding a bike's okay, but walking.
Yes.
I think
Right, is
the
okay.
proximity of Rose Park it makes it cut off already.
Mhm.
So there's not, what's the point of trying to build in that direction when we're trying to create a gathering space
Yeah, no, I'm.
or
that's-
more viewing or whatever?
So let's just say, if it's okay with everyone, downtown, Buckley South to Vancouver Street. I'm just throwing it out there, I'm open to
Yeah.
suggestions.
I was just gonna say Pemberton, because I never know where Buckley goes these days.
How do you not know where Buckley goes?
I don't know where Buckley
What do you mean you don't know where Buckley goes? Anyway,
Well, Buckley, Bailey, you know, all that.
Bailey's not Buckley.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. My ignorance is showing, I'm sorry.
I threw that out there.
Squamish.
I threw that out there just because we do have access to some land where right at that Buckley-Cleveland intersection. So,
Okay, yeah, then that makes
I mean,
sense, sure.
I also would.
where those
prefer if we
flowers
did-
are and stuff.
If we didn't cut off the sort of south second there, I don't know what is there park-wise and what is there, but like, Second Avenue south of Vancouver Street, I think, I only know it as sort of Teddy Down.
Yeah,
How about I just put a nice big circle over downtown?
I like that,
Right.
yeah.
I would,
Yeah.
I would prefer,
Circles are good.
I
Yeah.
suppose using downtown Squamish.
Yeah, just
Okay,
put
that
a
fit?
box or a circle around an area.
I can send you the catchment area for the downtown Squamish. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a public dike in that area where Tentown is. And
Yeah, I don't, yeah. I'm
it's a
sorry, I
little
don't
off
know
the
the
beaten
better
track.
name.
I would, it wouldn't be my preference.
We all know.
Yeah.
Let's open the door to possibilities, so. What else do we need to do to, I mean, we can work on language, maybe Catherine and I can work on some language that may be included with you in there, just because Catherine's a writer.
That would be
Tap into that.
most welcome. I see us having to have some sort of blurb in there about Squamish Nation, and
Mhm.
I see that as being particularly sensitive.
Mhm. And so maybe Suecia, Devin, Catherine and I work on some of that language to put in there. Okay. Everyone okay with that? Anyone else can join in if they want. What else do you think we need for this RFP, Devin?
I was just going through.
Is a willingness to work with youth part included?
I think we want them to describe how they could include youth in their project,
Yeah,
in the development of their project, or whatever we want to word, something like that.
yeah. No, in terms of timelines, so I'll come up with something in the next week or so and get you guys to take a look-see, and then we can go from there. And once we get it to a spot, we'll show it to you guys in next meeting and take it from there.
And we can fine tune it the next meeting and get it out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then we can determine how long we want it out for and deadlines and things like that. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've kind of done that in the past. How long did we give in the past for some of these responses?
We've given a month on the last 2 competitions. I see this
Possibly
requiring
taking
a
a bit
little bit more.
Yeah. Like 2 months or more.
I was thinking 6
3
weeks.
3
I think if you put too long, people just do it in the last 2 weeks anyway, so.
And how do we get it out to
Yeah, when it's going to be.
best candidates?
Well, we have our usual suspects, and I think we want to tap into, I mean, I think through the nation, we'll obviously put this. We can directly do that. And then there's all sorts of Lower Mainland. I know the City of Vancouver has a whole list. We could probably put it out to, as well as other lists that Catherine's talked about before. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like media?
Media, but aren't there like websites or something that artists look at for proposals? Are there? I thought you said that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I sent you that, I sent that
Mhm.
Call for
information.
entry online.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I don't get it anymore because I don't work there anymore.
Yeah. Nick?
Nope, you guys covered it, because if you've got formal sites that do that artists tap into, then I was just concerned, like, wondering how much time it takes to go through Squamish Nation systems. Channels, yeah. And if we're tapping into that community, which is important.
Swacia, how does the nation have sort of a direct line to the artist that they can get information out to them fairly strategically and efficiently for the artists? Or how would, do you know?
That's a tough question.
Does the nation have a list of artists?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
I'm just trying to remember what department it is. I don't know if it was under employment and trades. I don't know, I'll get it.
Okay. Devin, anything else?
Not right now concerning this.
Yep.
Oh, just as a potential for the wider, the other piece, the wider public piece. I mean, there's obviously Squamish Arts Council visuals, and we're going beyond Squamish in terms of that piece. So I would say let the Whistler Arts Council know, and the Sea to Sky Art Councils, just for that region.
What about Lower Mainland?
I think
Yeah.
North
All
Shore,
of BC.
Vancouver.
All of
Yeah,
BC.
for sure.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
Depending on timeline, there's a conference, actually, that we might possibly go to. The Arts BC. Anyway, it's a gathering of all of Lower Mainland, actually all of BC Arts Councils will be there. So if
When is that?
April,
May,
May?
beginning of May, sometime in there.
All I remember is 16, 17, and I thought it was.
Within the next 4 to 8 weeks.
Now, do you have, for example, does the Squamish Arts Council have contact information for all the arts councils in British Columbia?
Yep, we've got that.
So we could send this out and say, please share with your visual artists or your multimedia artists or all your artists.
Yeah, absolutely.
do we have a clear criteria what we're asking artists to propose?
No.
No.
Maybe that's a good idea.
What do you suggest?
I think it should say what kind of proposal we expect. So first of all, it has to be shown publicly, has
Yep.
to address the certain concerns, has to we'll have to come up with the
And I think Catherine, Devon, myself, and Suecio will work on
okay.
the language that is sort of describing the goals as we outlined earlier.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
before we said.
And then we'll have that language here for next meeting, and then we can all go through it and say, oh, I think we should focus on this more, or we can fine tune it next week. But I think that's sort of the language that we'll work on in terms of, these are our goals,
Mhm.
and
This-
we have
these
some of
are
them.
our expectations.
Mhm. Yeah,
Well, I'm really glad that we're not going to roll this proposal out across the country. So it looks like we're going across the province, is that right?
could be.
Because my sort of thought is to really try and do something that's quality, but it's really local. And it's quality, but really that's Squamish Nation, which admittedly is part of Vancouver as well. So I don't know if we can give more points or better points, or it just depends on what we actually get in terms of responses. But I really want to be able to showcase and see what exists in the Squamish Valley and Squamish Nation.
My point of view on that is absolutely with the Squamish Nation focused artwork. The other side of it, I'm open to a bigger, broader conversation, because it's that conversation about truth and reconciliation is local, is certainly what we're trying to do, but it's such a big, broad conversation. Like heck, if a Maori artist wanted to come and collaborate with a Coast Salish artist, put something here, I'd be open to it.
I guess where I'm coming from is I see this as a community conversation rather than as an art piece. And the art piece is the kind of culmination, if you will, but really the essence of the truth and reconciliation is the community conversation.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I just think it doesn't the conversation doesn't necessarily have to be local artists to generate that conversation. It would be great if it was. I'm not saying I would say no, but I think we're minimizing our opportunities if we
And that's
restrict
fair.
that too much. That's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
totally open to others. I think if there's local proposals that just are wow.
Outstanding, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just suspect that we've got so much talent in this valley that it would be nice to have them. How do we access it?
it would be lovely.
Well,
Yeah, I agree.
Let them come forward and make their proposals. And I also want to see a first-class piece of art.
Yeah.
It's going to stay, forever.
The big challenge is these big installations are not something everybody does.
No.
And we really don't have a lot of those big installation artists locally. It'd be great to try to inspire some of that. So that's why I just think we need to sort of cast
And
quite a
that's
wide
fine,
net
too.
with that. And if there are big installation artists locally, awesome.
Yeah.
So maybe we can have a stump with cars placed
Oh,
on it.
sure.
I love it. I think
Where are they
it's
gonna put
really
that?
cool.
When we-
I don't know, it should be somewhere
He's
here in
doing this
Squamish.
for 25 years. He's trying to sell that.
25 years.
years.
Oh, really?
Trying to sell it?
He's trying to sell the idea, the project.
I mean, obviously, I
He's
can
sold
see
it
the
to
Sky
a couple
Highway.
places around the world now.
Well,
Yeah, there's one in Germany.
Yep.
They want to remove that from.
They do but he's also put a similar type totem in
Mhm.
Germany, and he's doing one in South Africa or something.
No, in Israel.
Israel maybe,
No,
yeah.
actually, Israel was
Anyway.
the proposal. Right.
Okay,
Okay.
do we have enough to get the bones of a thing in front of the committee next month?
I will, yes. I think I've got a challenge in order to concisely write this up, but I think that's why Catherine and you guys are here, so.
Yeah.
So I'll get to it.
So we have a little subcommittee to help out with sort of the language around it, Catherine, Swayze, and myself.
Correct.
And so maybe if you create the framework,
Yeah.
get feedback from us, we'll make sure Swayze is vetting it for protocol and proper articulation of things.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, can we move on?
Yeah,
Budget.
budget. Budget's a really easy one because you guys haven't spent any money yet. So,
Same as 2 months ago, right?
yeah, so same as 2 months ago.
Okay.
Same as 2 months ago. And just so that it's not left hanging in questions, we've got a meeting with operations next week to talk about the mosaic and how to potentially start dealing with that.
Okay.
So we'll talk more about that next.
How's it looking over the winter? Has there been any report on that? Or is that?
I don't think they've looked underneath the mats for a while.
I don't think they've looked underneath the mats in a while. Yeah.
But you've got a bucket of pieces, right? in your
I've got a
office?
bucket of pieces in my office. We've looked under the mats probably halfway through the summer. No, the mats weren't down halfway through the summer.
Yeah, the
It wasn't
boards were
too long ago,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's not bad.
okay.
And then will there be a report back to this committee
Yes.
before?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Do we have any, did we get all the things wrapped? Is all that money done? Weren't we gonna do 2 more? How is that going?
No, all 6 are done. Or
Oh, are
all
they?
5.
The
All
one
5.
outside of the school is?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I haven't noticed it yet.
Yeah, sorry, that was the last update. I showed some
And the
pictures.
one near the Brackendale pump station?
The one near the Brackendale pump station, I don't know. I'll have to double check on that one.
I don't think it's done.
Okay, you would know.
Yeah, I drive by that.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
Yeah,
If we could check on when that is gonna be done, that'd be great.
yeah, absolutely.
There are no referrals and no status, roundtable.
Can I just follow up from what you were talking about? I have 2 of the wraps from this past year. Toby's yours and the one that's over by the insurance office on the map. I don't have information about who the artists are and that kind of stuff.
Oh, I was gonna tackle those ones. It's on my list of things to do.
Okay, because I've got photographs, that kind of stuff. If you want me to do it, I just need the information. If it's
Okay.
easier for you to do it, blessing on you.
Okay.
Whatever, yeah. There's actually 9 pieces up on that site right now, so if anybody can have a look at it and say, yeah, this kind of works or that doesn't work or whatever, or tweaky, then maybe we can start moving with that. I was going to look at the stone circle. There's a plaque there that I'm just having a hell of a time reading, actually, to try and decipher that so that I can get the stone circle, up the various pieces of it up on the site as well. So that's moving along a little bit. And then the other one is but as I say, yours is up, Toby's is up, and one of the other ones I've done just because I knew a little bit of information about them.
Sure. And I can always go into the back end and,
Yeah,
Fill
and
in.
change it, of course, yeah.
yeah, not
Any of
change
us can.
Zhuzh it up, because I've got the names and the.
That would be useful, the
Yeah.
names. I just, Squamish kayaks. Very literal.
I thought I'd show you these. Developer in Town commissioned 3 salmon bike racks from Christine and Nick.
Oh, yeah.
And I think 2 of them are gonna go up on the dike, in front of his properties, Michael Atkinson's properties. I think the other one might go to Quest, but just thought I'd show you that. Kind of fun. There's, I don't know, a head-on view. You can see that. Any other, yeah, Cindy?
I just was curious where we sit with flags and street flags for this year. The reason why I asked.
So I didn't hear you there.
Street flags, so like.
Oh,
The banners?
Yeah, banners, sorry. Where this committee sits with that, I know that was something we went through last year. And also secondary as to why I ask is that the Arts Council came into some funding to help advertise for the Wind Festival. Part of that funding can go to street banners. So there could be some harmonies in terms of funding. We have about $1,000 to $1,500 available. Anyway, so I just wanted to throw that topic on the table.
our intention was to get 2 to 3 seasons out of the banners, so we have at least 1 more.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 more.
Yeah.
They seem to have weathered pretty well, from what I've observed. So, but if the Arts Council wants to, did you want to commission some of your own to sort of put in a certain stretch, or?
Well, I think, I wasn't here when we started the conversation on the banner, so I didn't know if it was an annual thing, but it sounds like it's a 2-3 year cycle thing.
Usually you can get 2 to 3 years depending on the colors and how well the banners are
Right.
actually built.
Yeah. I think my original thinking was we could, when that call goes out, we could collaborate what that proposal looks like, but if that's not what we're doing this year, then.
Yeah, I'm hoping, it's not an insignificant investment, so I'm hoping we
No,
get,
it's not.
like the whole thing was 15 grand or something, I can't remember. Because there's a lot of banners, so. So we're hoping to get, I would hope 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. So we have 2 more years, hopefully.
So I guess
Yeah.
a follow-up question would be, if the Arts Council commissioned Wing Festival specific banners, would it be under the jurisdiction of the committee to decide if they could go up down Cleveland Avenue, or? I don't know who's to ask that question.
Not sure the, go ahead.
From an operations perspective, there would be a significant cost to take down the existing banners, put up yours, and then take them back down again.
Right.
So that's something that we need to work into your costs. No, volunteers cannot do it. No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, much of the big cost is putting them up and down.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
consider that. That's good to know.
And so I can get you some costs, because film companies do that sometimes. They pay to take them down and put them back up again. And it's not insignificant. A private company does it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way, the $1,500 you have wouldn't cover it.
Okay. No, that's great to
Unfortunately.
know.
Meg,
No, I'm gonna pass.
anybody else?
I just have to plug the foyer gallery
Excellent.
and the International Women's Day
Oh, yeah.
Art Show, which was just installed this week, and tomorrow's International Women's Day. And so I'm going to be putting out all the promo for the show. But the opening reception is on a Tuesday night.
Why do you do that?
I don't do it. It's what gets booked through, like, it's what's available and what,
Which Tuesday night?
March 20th,
Okay.
6 to 8 p.m. So it'll be quite a nice big reception with music and nibblies and a lot of people there.
Who
so-
books it?
It's the artist. It's the artist that hosts it. So it was the coordinator that booked that day.
Maybe just tell them you can't do it Tuesdays. Pick any other day.
Yeah,
Just don't do it Tuesday.
I can start doing that. I can start pushing artists to choose different dates. But a big part of it is it's only Monday to Thursday nights that we can host them, and Monday nights people don't really like to do that. Thursday nights, the multipurpose room at the library is often booked. So.
On that, we have our OCP public hearing next Monday and Tuesday night. There might be a third night depending on how popular it is. If you haven't read the OCP and you want, I think the trick with this is that you make sure you get lots of different inputs from lots of different people. So it's not just people who are really like this one piece or really hate this one piece, but you get lots of different perspectives on the values that are outlined in the policies that are really broadly based on the
What time
OCP.
and where?
It's at Brennan Park, 6
p.m.
o'clock on Monday night, 6 o'clock on Tuesday night.
And is it a kind of an open house kind of thing?
No,
Or
this is the public
Oh,
hearing.
it's a public hearing.
Yeah, this is the legislated public hearing,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'll be in my best behavior. Anything else? Don't see anything. Motion to terminate. Moved by Meg, second by Maciek. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries. Thanks, everybody.